Hello, this presentation shall discuss the founding of modern society. Human groups have developed ways in which public decision making, leadership, maintenance of social cohesion and order, protection of group rights, and safety from external threats are handled. Anthropologists identify these as political systems or political organizations. Introduced by Marshall Sahlins and Elman Service in 1960, this system of classification of political organizations, that is, bands, tribes, chiefdoms, and state, uses types of leadership, societal integration and cohesion, decision making mechanisms, and degree of control over people to distinguish between these four levels. Political organization has evolved with increasing complexity along with increase in scale. Note the evolution of economical structure from reciprocity to the market, from a classless egalitarian society to social stratification. Politically simple group decisions by consensus have evolved now to institutions backed by a formal law. Europe in the 17th century was fermenting with new ideas for political organization after the Age of Enlightenment. Kings then resorted to the theory of divine right, which made subject loyalty a divine duty and the actions of the king absolutely unquestionable. In this context, philosophers tried to define the theory of social contract, which defined conditions that a regime must fulfill to make it worthy of subject loyalty. Prominent theorists of the social contract theory include Thomas Hobbes, whose book Leviathan was a first attempt to even define the social contract. What man gains by giving up a life in the wild, a life of unlimited freedoms, no laws but many uncertainties, and accepting life in a civil state. However, he still argues for absolute loyalty to the ruler. John Locke went further and dismissed the theory of divine right and argued for all people to have three basic rights: life, liberty, and property. These three rights have found a place in most modern constitutions across the world. They formed an important part of the French Revolution in 1789. In this particular presentation, we will be discussing Rousseau's book, The Social Contract. The concern that dominates Rousseau's work is to find a way of preserving human freedom in a world where human beings are increasingly dependent on one another for the satisfaction of their needs. This ties in with the idea of Adam Smith that more developed societies are helped by division of labor among its members, causing them to become more interdependent even to fulfill basic needs. Rousseau first defines the body politic or sovereign, being formed by the agreement of all constituting individuals. The sovereign shall give direction to the general will of the people. Interestingly, apart from civil liberty achieved by obedience to law that the body politic defines for itself, proprietorship or individual right to property forms an integral part of the idea of a civil state. Rousseau first defines the body politic or the sovereign as being formed by the agreement of all the constituting individuals. The sovereign shall give direction to the general will of the people. Interestingly, apart from civil liberty achieved by obedience to law that the body politic defines for itself, proprietorship or individual right to property forms an integral part of the idea of civil state. This is directly from Rousseau's work. The advantage of this does not seem to have been felt by ancient monarchs who called themselves kings of Persians, Scythians, or Macedonians and seemed to regard themselves more as rulers of men than as masters of a country. Those of the present day more cleverly call themselves kings of France, Spain, England, etc., thus holding the land they are quite confident of holding the habitants. Historically, small Greek city-states were the last to achieve a true sovereign in practice. How do you give a common identity to the people of a territory as large as France? Here came the idea of a nation. The national question, as the old Marxists called it, is situated at the point of intersection of politics, technology, and social transformation. Although nation originally meant a people with common culture and traditions, it slowly evolved to mean a political entity. The Malayalis are a nation united by common language, history, and culture, while Kerala is a political state. However, when nation as an idea was used to form new political states, as in the example of France, the new state needed to separate itself from the old kings and their culture and create a new identity for itself based on the interests of the common people. In every body politic, there is a maximum strength which it cannot exceed and which it only loses by increasing in size. A state controlled by its people could not be too big. However, the economic developments of the time, the Industrial Revolution, necessitated large states. In the words of Hobsbawm, a large population and an extensive territory endowed with manifold national resources are essential requirements of the normal nationality. A small state can never bring to complete perfection within its territory the various branches of production. So, a large nation, but of the people, by the people, for the people. This is where technology came to the aid. The relationship between this new state and its citizen was novel. Politically, it ruled over and administered these inhabitants directly and not through intermediate systems of rulers and autonomous corporations. At no previous time in history was a large empire ruled without fairly autonomous local rulers. No previous time in history was a uniform codified law applicable across the entire territory in all aspects of the citizen's life. Local cultures and customs didn't matter to the national law. Literacy, fast communication and transport provided by railways, telegraph, newspapers, and radio helped with the basic functions of a democracy like conduct of elections and implementation of laws and policies. A new extensive body of government servants as representative of the state and aware of state laws was required to run the state. A census maintaining a record of all citizens became mandatory to even attempt to understand such a large body politic. Technology also helped the citizen identify with the state. The modern nation is too large a group where human beings could derive an intuitive identity. Tools were required to form a national identity. An official national language became essential to carry out government transactions across such a large territory using tools like telegraph and post. National icons like the flag and the map became a part of every citizen's identity. Formal state run schools helped new generations of children identify themselves with these icons and trained them in the official language. Since the army usually employed the largest number of people, the official language was also used here, and the soldiers ultimately dissipated the knowledge to the masses. Nation based sports also developed along with the idea of the modern state. It is interesting to note that in the first Olympics held in 1896 at Athens, athletes represented themselves or just clubs. Only in 1906 did nations send in their teams. This is a moment etched in every Indian's memory, I'm sure. The ability of the mass media to make what were in effect national symbols part of the life of every individual and thus to break down the divisions between the private and local spheres in which most citizens normally lived and the public and national one. Thus, the modern political structure has also undermined traditional social structures which had more local relevance. People now identify with much larger imagined communities like the country and even the world. This quote from the book Nations and Nationalisms in 1780 is relevant in the case of India. Territory oriented movements for liberation could not avoid building on the foundation of what common elements had been given to their territory by its colonial power or powers, since often this was the only unity and national character the future country had. The unity imposed by the conquest and administration might sometimes, in the long run, produce a people that saw itself as a nation. This presentation has also been an attempt to give a broader definition to the idea of modern culture, the culture of individual representation, individual proprietorship, and identity with imagined communities. Thank you.